Welcome, Dr. Roberta Hines, the chairman and professor at Yale University. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to you. For those of us who may not know you very well, can you please give us a brief description about yourself?
So thank you, Allison, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I will keep this brief. I've had the privilege of being chair at Yale for 27 years. I started my career as an intensivist anesthesiologist and have spent most of my clinical life in that domain. And really have used that as a springboard for my research and my education. While I'm somewhat biased, or some would say profoundly biased, I think that anesthesiology is unique in that situation where we do have the opportunity to extend our sphere in those domains where so many of our colleagues have more limited opportunities in terms of balancing their life, balancing their clinical and academic life.
As you know, anesthesia is not a very diverse field as many other specialties are in medicine. How do you think we can improve to diversify our specialty?
Medicine in general has made some strides. I think now for the first time in medical school, we're 52%, women are 52% of the class, right? Which is happened over the last couple of years. And so that's an opportunity for us, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we take these incredible, young, bright people and show them this is a career that's vital and that is a career for them? And that gets back to making sure that we have a true a wide portfolio of options, and getting to these medical students early is really important. I think it's so important, and I overused word pipeline, but you can't overuse it, right? Because these folks get imprinted very early. Mm-hmm. And we need to be part of that imprinting process. And we often aren't, right? Because once again, we're already working really hard, going to form an anesthesia interest group, going to speak to first year medical students. It's like, you got to be kidding me, right? Really, I'm going to do that at the end of my day. But these minds get seduced really early. And I think it's important, once again, to know the local climate. What is a student at your institution going to be interested in? And that's going to be different. It's not a one size fits all. And we've adapted or adopted our relationship with medical students here over the course of many years, looking at the incoming class. And so it takes a little work because it isn't a one size fits all solution, nor is it for our specialty. But we need to be able to show folks you can be successful in a host of domains, right? And not just any one. And when you speak to students, I'm always amazed, I'm sure you are too, when you ask them to define our specialty or what they think they can do, it's incredibly myopic, right? And I say shame on us, because we need to go back and show them that's an important aspect of what we do, but it is a piece of what we do. It is not all of what we do. And so the onus is on us. We need to take some responsibility here. Now we have people coming in who, now we have we sort of have the good substrate here. We have to make sure that substrate is enriched by our specialty, that we show them what we can do, and that they're moving in the direction towards us. And we're actually seeing now, getting back to our comment, everything old is new again, right? There's actually interesting data that over the last 3 to 5 years, anesthesiology is seeing an increased incidence of people coming into our specialty after they've completed another specialty. Mm-hmm. And that used to be not unusual. Then for a while it became very unusual, right? People were more and once again, I get back to it because that's a failure on us, that we haven't shown them early enough the really amazing things that our specialty can offer in all those domains. And it takes them getting into another specialty and seeing what we do. And, luckily there are many of them that have the ability, and it is a luxury to do a second residency or leave a residency and come and do it. So a long-winded answer, but get involved really early and find out what makes the students in your area tick, right? Our students tend to be very focused in physician scientist development and those areas. So we tend to show them early on what our clinical research is. We actually developed a first year project where we support medical students during their summer. It's a sort of an internal FAIR concept. I stole it from FAIR. I'm not ashamed to steal really good things. So I stole this from FAIR, which is a mini immersion. And now we're doing one for educators, because we also saw that many of these students wanted to learn how to be physician educators. And I thought, well, if we can do it for physician researchers, why can't we do it for physician educators? So I think these really creative solutions with tapping into the students early on and opening their eyes and their minds, right? Opening their eyes and minds about what our specialty is and can be for them.
Mm-hmm. When I speak to the medical students that I've run into, I don't run into that many, but when I do, they don't really understand what anesthesia is. And actually I've run into several residents who scrambled into anesthesia per se, because it was their last rotation in their last year, and they realized, oh, I want to be an anesthesiologist. So I think what you're saying is true, that we have to try to partner with the medical school and get us into their curriculum earlier and show the breadth of our specialty, because we have a very broad specialty. I mean, you can do so many things. And that's actually one of the reasons why I love anesthesia.
Right. And you have the luxury, and it is a luxury of, being able to change your course correction clinically or in your career and being advantaged by it. And that doesn't happen in certainly outside of medicine, but certainly even in medicine, right? If you're in internal medicine and a really referral, if you have to, have a clinic, get your patients, follow them longitudinally, those kind of issues. If you were to change between the lab and the ICU and education, you would have a hard time moving forward and balancing all of those, right? And I just use my own career as an example. I've taken time to be totally research, taken time to be totally administrative, taken time to do this. And just, you can do that, and then the sum becomes greater than the parts. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen in almost any other specialty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find something equivalent.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're not good at with the students, I think. And their eyes just open up when they see that. They go, really? I can do that? Really? I can do that? Yeah, of course you can do it. And really, it's really showing them that there even are very, very, what I would call even more I don't like the word non-traditional, but I'll use it. Opportunities. I keep talking about opportunities in public health and using Jerome Adams, as the first Surgeon General of the U.S., because so many of the students now want to have an impact, whether it's in global health or population health, and they struggle with, has anesthesiology ever been in that space? Can they ever do it? And, so don't be afraid to shine a really important light on folks in our specialty who have done it, right? And are continuing to do it, because so many of our students are looking for that, and I think that's important as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. How do we support and advance those of us who are already diverse in our specialty to get more into leadership positions and advance into other positions in the hospital or in a specialty society?
Acknowledging that it's important is the first step, right? If you look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, the most important thing we have done is actually acknowledge that we hadn't done a good job at it, right? Mm-hmm. And putting some resources behind it. With resources, when you acknowledge something is important and you put a structure behind it, that often comes with institutional resources. So I'm going to encourage everyone to think about in their own institution how they, and in their own department, how they would codify their DEI activities, because we're all doing them, but we're not doing them in a cohesive way. And with once acknowledging that you, whether it's a DEI committee, a DEI task force, whether you have a vice chair for, however you're going to do it, that acknowledges it's important. That acknowledges that you're going to be paying attention to it and you're going to measure it, right? More importantly, we have to measure it. We have scorecards for everything. We have a scorecard for on-time starts in the OR, right? We have a scorecard for turnover time. Do we have a scorecard that talks about presenting, you know, of this group that we're bringing into the residency or promotion at this? We don't. We should, and we're now developing those. If we don't measure things, we're not going to be able to show how we're improving, or are we improving, or how we could do it differently. So these are what I like to call the social soft sciences that they would talk about. You know, like I said, we would never think about having something in hardcore science and not measuring it, but we do it all the time. It's in education. It's now going into DEI. So think about it in a more structured, traditional, and I keep getting back, we have, you know, and the AAMC has been doing this for a number of years, getting back to the AAMC. Every year they publish, you know, percent promotions by regions of the country, by gender, ethnicity, by race. They were the first to shine a light on this many years ago. And, you know, and it's quite, you know, it's humbling when you look at how little progress we've made. But every year looking at that graph keeps people's attention and keeps people's focus on how important it is. And so when there's an opportunity to invest resources, you can come forward and say, look at this. This is the national data. This is the institutional data. We need to do better. Right. And really, like I said, it's really getting a group, and particularly we all want to make sure that when we're going somewhere, there's a group of people who look like us. That's important. Inclusivity, in the true sense and definition of the word, is really important. So what we often find is we recruit people by diverse gender, ethnicity, race, sexual identity in that whole area. But there's not a group of people within our community to serve as a home for them. And so we recruit and we lose, and we recruit and we lose. So that's what really codifying this is, and acknowledging that it's a long time. You know, we just talked about how long it took to get women in medicine, right? It's been 200 plus years. You know, God save us, it can't take us that long in DEI. But it's not going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5 year process. It's important. And that's what I'm saying. If we don't measure it, we won't keep our eye on the ball, and we don't know where we're going. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I do think we don't think about it in the same way we think about other things that are as important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What you're saying is an important first step, right? Because you have to start somewhere, and at least we can start with what you're saying, measuring it and looking at that number, staring at us on our face and being like, it's got to budge and we have to do something.
And if it doesn't budge, go back and say, well, we just started these 5 new programs, right? And in spite of these 5 new programs, it's not working. Or we've done these 2 things and look at the difference they've made. Mm-hmm. So not only just measuring it, but then taking back that measurement to see what's effective and what's not effective, right? Is so important. And also making sure that you have resident involvement in all of these committees. That's been a key to success in so much of what we've done, right? They are our future. Making sure they're included. And they'll also bring things to the table that we might not have thought about that were important in this world as well, right?
Yeah. And I also think it's important to start creating, as you mentioned, like a home or home base. So maybe starting like a mentoring program for underrepresented mm-hmm. groups, so that they can connect with other people who've gone through it, have similar experiences.
Right.
It helps. I think it would have helped.
I mean, and I think that's it. It provides almost a safe place, and I don't, that's probably not the politically correct phrase, but it is a safe place where you can come and say things, and it really provides an opportunity to be yourself. Whether it's we've done it for many years of women in anesthesia, right? And now we need to kind of ramp that up and think about the successes that we've had about that is mentoring, networking, all of those issues, and include that for that other and the other groups that we're talking about, and also reaching out. We just developed a really good program with underrepresented schools like Morehouse and Meharry, where and you can do the same thing with other groups. It doesn't have to be just that, but it's really taking attention and effort. It's not going to happen if you don't do that.
Yeah, it has to become a priority for
absolutely
your institution. It has to start there, at least at your institution. I know the ASA is starting to do more. So as a society, we are moving towards that. But you're right. It's going to take a long time, some time, hopefully not very long.
Right. And I would also encourage people for their subspecialty and component societies. I think SOAP has probably, just because the nature of the OB community is a bit ahead of the curve on some of this, as is pediatrics, but the AUA, about 2 years ago, just formed a diversity and inclusion council and task force. So ASA is doing a wonderful job, but we can't rely on them alone to do it. So roll it down to your local component societies as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I participate a lot in SPA, and they have a committee.
Right, and it's not unexpected, right? If you look at the composition of SPA, it's probably different than cardiac or ICU, but we should learn from that, right? So why don't folks in the SCA speak to people in pediatrics and learn from that, right? It's that cross-pollination opportunity again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, and good ideas, you can borrow them. Why not?
Yeah, just unabashedly steal them, like my fair summer program. I'm not shy, just steal.
You kind of alluded this before, but some people experience imposter syndrome. And how do we help our colleagues who may be feeling or experiencing this at work?
I think it's, once again, allowing them to have someone to talk to. And however you set that up in your own institution, one needs to do it under the I'm going to use the word protection, once again, a strong word, but in a way that allows people to understand they can have those difficult conversations in a safe space. And there's not a one size fits all there either, right? But I do think that in the department, there should be somebody, and not just for faculty, residents as well, right? I've seen it equally as much in residents as in faculty, sometimes more so because of the nature of the hierarchical relationship in which they work, right? Mm-hmm. And then there should be institutional resources as well that one can liaison with, but it's really giving people the permission and opportunity to come forward. That's the most important issue. And it's hard, as you know. There's a great deal of fear here, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I remember I had a friend of mine who, she was a new attending, and she was having a difficult time. And this is even before I even knew the word imposter syndrome. And I was just like, I don't understand why you feel this way. You're so well trained. Like, you shouldn't feel this at all. Like, you know what you're doing. And I don't know if I was as supportive as I could have been, but I didn't know how to help. But
I think you were listening. Yeah, no, you were incredibly supportive. You were, because you said to her, "This is not normal," right? That is the first step. You have to say, "This is not normal. you should not be experiencing this, because people do normalize it after a while, right? If you're with that same attending 2 or 3 days in a row, can you imagine? You would leave thinking it's all about you and not about them. So giving someone the permission to say, it's not you, it's somebody else. Let's go address the real problem, and that is not you, is the most important thing you can do. So you did a really good job there.
Well, thank you.
You know, you don't have to, your words don't have to be perfect. You don't always have to be eloquent. You just have to you have to get involved. It's the whole bystander issue, right? How many times have we seen things, and then, you know, as you're walking away, you say, I wish I'd intervened, right? And you don't do it because, well, you're not quite sure you have the right words, or you're not quite sure you know what to say, but it's the intervention that is important. And that's exactly what you did.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that more of us can do the same for our coworkers, if they recognize, if they even realize that it's happening to someone in their circle.
Yeah, that's getting back to your DEI discussion. That's where, you know, really having grand rounds or a learning opportunity in microaggressions and bystander issues can be really helpful, because people don't even know how to categorize those interactions, right? They don't know it's a microaggression. They, you know, and then they say, I don't know what that was, it just felt bad. But when you can identify something, give someone the tools, and that's another really, really good opportunity under DEI. It keeps it in that space where people can always come back to a common discussion.
Yeah, that's yeah, sometimes you know that what you just said, you don't know, you know that it feels wrong, but you don't know what it is. And by having these conversations and topics brought up, you can start understanding, oh, that's what it was. And this is how I should respond or change or make better.
And I think also, once again, it humanizes it, because when it happens to you, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm the only person, so it must be me. I must deserve this, right? I did something for this, as opposed to when you start really taking a step back and looking at it, and you realize, no, this is that person's way every time, and I'm one of 12, 14, 16 people. And that's really, really therapeutic when you begin those conversations.
And thank you so much. You've been wonderful. It's been fabulous talking to you. You're such an inspiration.